Hey guys, Dave back here. So if you've seen the video I posted of this thing running, this is my upright hopper cooled 2.5 horsepower Fuller Johnson engine. It is exceptionally rare, including both horsepowers. There's somewhere in the neighborhood of 8 or 9 known to exist in the world. There was only ever 1,000 produced, so it's a fairly rare engine. So you don't just go down to the corner store and buy parts for this thing. All the springs were corroded and weak and didn't work. So I reached out to a company called Lee Spring, that's L-E-E, and got some springs that were as close as we could get to what was missing. So when possible, I got piano wire springs, and we'll bring this up. Piano wire springs, while they're not the unfinished spring that this engine would have used when new, they look unfinished and they're stronger than a cadmium spring as a general rule. They'll take the abuse a little bit more. So of the 3 springs I needed, this was the only one I could get in piano wire. So we're going to put these on, and we're going to put a new bolt in the igniter for our electrical connection because that was coming loose also. And then we'll see if we can get this thing to fire off. So this spring, and I'm hoping that it all shows up here, this spring hooks up right here on this stud, and it comes down and it hooks right over this arm. Now you need enough tension to it goes to this. Need enough tension to pull this back up. So what we're going to do, and I started this backwards, we're going to hook the spring up here. Sometimes you have to open them up a little bit and get a little bit better purchase on them in their holes. There we go. So we'll bring it up. Okay, that seems to be about where I need to be to bring up. This is our igniter trip and our exhaust valve. This is what opens the exhaust valve, which is right here. So we're going to hold our thumb right about on that. Area here. I should have grabbed a pair of dikes. I grabbed a pair of needle nose with a cutter. Okay, let me hop over here and get a pair of side cutters, and we'll redo this. Let's see here. There's a pair right there. Okay, so let's redo this. See if it fits better going the other way. I think it does. The nice thing is, you have a lot of extra spring here. If this doesn't work out, if this ends up being too short, we have a lot of extra spring, or if this breaks over time, we have some spare parts. I don't anticipate this engine running a lot. We're having a small get-together next weekend of the guys in my local engine club. Kind of as a tribute, one of our founding members had a stroke, and we're kind of going to do this so he can come down and watch the engines run from his car. And we'll hopefully, after this whole COVID mess passes, he'll be back with us. This is some tough stuff to cut. There we go. And of course, when you drop the piece that you need, it goes bouncing off into Never Never Land. Ouch. Where did it go? Bounced under my chair. That figures. So we'll take move the camera down here a little bit. So we'll take and bring it around like that. And we'll bring it up like that. And let's snip off a little bit here. Okay. So in theory, we're going to hook that up there. We're going to hook that over its little stud there. So if it ends up being not enough tension, we can take another couple of coils out of it and we'll be good. Now, and in all of this, I seem to have misplaced my other short spring. There it is. Now this spring here, it pulls the latch out back. Most of you watching this are probably familiar with how a hit and miss engine works. But for those that aren't, you get this hooked up. Okay, that's in there. There's a little hole in the end of the bolt here. This spring was just a little weak. It might be a little strong now. I'll have to wait and see. I might have to stretch this out just a little bit. So anyway, so the latch out, this arm here hooks over. There's a latch here and a latch here. It's not real visible in the camera from this angle. And then this, when this does this, the exhaust valve, which is up here, is held open, so you have no compression, you have no fire. That's how a hit and miss engine works, is the exhaust valve is locked open. So anyway, then when you drop to a certain number of RPMs, the spring pulls that back, this comes up, the exhaust valve's now closed, and you have compression, you can fire. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to bring around the igniter, and we'll put the new bolts in that, and we'll show you how that works, and then we'll put the fuel pump back together because the fuel pump springs were weak. And then we should be ready to give this thing an attempt at firing off. So I'm going to shut the camera down, we'll get reset for the igniter, and I'll be right back with you. Okay, so I've got the igniter here in my hand, and the problem was this screw right here wasn't long enough coming through, so when you connected up your ignition wires back here, they kept falling off. So when you're dealing with these old engines, everything was always unfinished cast iron for the most part, or brass. I elected to go with brass screws. This particular one's an 8x24. It's a standard screw. And when we run this in here, And I don't know if she made it into the picture. No, doesn't look like she did. My dog just came to say hello. So we'll run that down. Now you see how much brass stud we have sticking up back here. So you have plenty to put the wires on with. And then what I'll do is I'll put a nut under here and then a wire and then another nut. So it's held nice and tight. But the way an igniter works is use a battery. And as that thing's running back and forth, it flips your contacts closed and then they pop open. When they pop open, you have a spark, and that's what ignites your fuel. And this has to be timed like any other engine, although it's much simpler than, say, a V8 is today, as far as the concept of it. These were designed to be farm engines that the farmers could fix themselves. So this is your trip lever out here. We'll see if we can get the camera to come up a little bit. It's kind of hard because the muffler's in the way. Let me bring it over here a little bit. So anyway, you put the igniter on its bolts. You see where, this is a piece that goes up and down with that spring we just replaced. That's what trips your igniter right there. Held on by two nuts, and like anything else, it's got to have a good tight seal for compression, like anything else having to do with an engine. If I remember right, these are 3/4, but I had an adjustable wrench laying here, so we'll use that. A lot of these original bolts were square. These were hex when I got it. I don't know if they're original replacements. So we've got that attached. So now when we spin this over, when you'll watch this piece come in, and it trips it, it just created a spark. And now, when it comes back up, that spring, see, that spring needs to pull this back so it resets. So see, our spring here isn't tight enough, which I kind of thought might be the case. So we're going to pull this spring back off. We're going to cut off, about 3 coils, let's say. And I know I don't have this in the camera. Let's see if we can get this bent out there. Those cutters on those side cutters of mine are pretty dull. They'd want to cut this, so trim that off. And I'll bring it back out again. So for those of you who didn't see the other video where I just fired this off for a brief second, and it ran if we helped it. In fact, in that video, the gentleman that you saw helping me, if you did see it, that's the gentleman that had the stroke. So that's why we're going to have this little drive-by engine show for him. But so now let's put this back in again. Okay, now we should be able to pull it down. See, it's close, but it's still not, there it goes. Still not pulling it up every time, which we want it to do. So let's take off another loop. It's just a matter of experiment until you get it right. So anyway, I really lucked into this engine Just a matter of being in the right place at the right time. So, okay, there, it pulled it up. Still not pulling it up every time, so we'll just keep cutting it shorter till we get it right. There it goes. Now it seems to be tripping every time. So, you know, you just have to experiment with these old engines. They don't, you know, they don't have the parts down at the corner store. In fact, there's no YouTube videos on this engine to go out there and help you because it is so rare. You know, I know where there's 3 of this horsepower, counting mine. If you have more, hey, let me know in the comments section. We always like to know where the survivors are if you're in the engine community. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to switch to the other side of the engine. That's where the fuel pump is. And we're going to go ahead and see if the springs I got are heavy enough for the fuel pump to return. That seems to be my problem, is it was getting the right springs for that was really difficult. So I bought a couple of different ones. We may even have to combine them up as a temporary measure until I can figure out a better solution. So I'm going to shut down and reset the camera, and I'll be right back. Okay guys, I've got the camera set back up here, and what we've got is fuel pump body, and then the fuel pump plunger, and I've replaced the O-ring right here by my 4th finger. And to get this in is a bit of a pain. When I got it, they had pennies to shim it because the spring was weak. So we'll take those pennies out. And then this is your pump right here. There's a hole back here. This is your return line for your overflow fuel. Hole back there you got to line up at the same time. Bit of a pain to get it all lined up, but you don't want it to pull this apart. You got to pull the flywheel, and that's not going to happen. There we go. Okay, we're in. Okay, so now we're going to grab, I ordered 2 lengths of springs from Lee Spring. We're going to grab the longer one. I'm afraid we might even have to double them up because they ended up a little in fact, I'm sure we're going to have to double them up. We're going to have a lot more tension. So I'll probably end up having to order new springs for this. So anyway, the springs sit right there. And yeah, that's right. You got to put this. I got the cart before the horse here. you got to put this in first. And it screws down. And that's your pumping action when it pumps. So now we'll try putting it back together here. It does come out, but it's really tight. You got to just get it lined up just perfect to get it to go together. And I do need to check that beep here real quick. That's the weekend job. Okay, we'll get it there so we have as much vertical clearance as possible. There we go. So now we'll put the nuts on down here. That noise you hear behind you would be another one of my dogs. What's up, buddy? Huh? Come here, Roscoe. Come here, buddy. My grandson's just now leaving. Roscoe, come here. The other thing about these old engines, the lines on the fuel lines most often were actually steel. And so that's something else we got to line up here is this old steel fuel line. Okay, we're good and tight there. So when we turn this, you should see that fuel lever. See how it goes down and comes back up. Okay, doubling up those springs did the trick. And our spring that we did earlier, wanted to be cantankerous there for a minute. So probably gonna have to go hunt down the actual wrench for this. And it's 9/16, of course. Okay, we're tightened down. The fuel pump pumps. So what I have to do now is I have to wire this unit up. I have to wire up the igniter and the battery and the coil. And that's pretty normal wiring. You know, most guys who are in the engine community have done it. So I may or may not video that because it's going to be kind of hard to set up a video by myself because of where all the wires have to go. So we're going to get this thing wired up. I'll show you the end result, and it's probably just going to be a temporary, probably not going to waste time getting it perfect. And as soon as we get it wired up, we'll come back and we'll try to start it. Okay guys, so I've got all my springs replaced. I've got my ignition wired up. What you see here, I'm trying to see if that's coming up in the picture. I don't know if it is or not, I can't tell from here. I've got an electric motor starter that cranks this thing because I can't crank it and handle the... Yeah, that's what I was afraid of. It's not showing up in the picture. Let me see if I can turn that camera a little bit. Okay, I know it's a little cluttered, crap behind and all, but this is the motor starter. It engages the flywheel, hooked to a 12-volt battery. So we're gonna, and there's a clamp down here with a piece of pipe on it to hold the starter. So we're gonna try get this thing to crank over. So I'm choking it right here by covering the air hole. I've already pumped the pump to prime gas up to the system. And then I've got a little knife switch over here that we're going to turn on to give it power to the igniter. And let's see what happens. Okay, so my igniter trip still is not returning even at high speed. Let's try it again. Oh, it ignited there. I heard it ignite. Let's see if I can get it to roll over. I may have to shorten that spring some more. Okay, so it's being cantankerous, so let me get this set up and we'll try it again. Okay guys, from where I last videoed to today is about a week. Never did get the thing to ignite and ended up finding out that there's so little clearance in the igniter hole right here that the igniter barely came out, and what would happen is it would ground out and I'd get no spark. And the best way to take that out is with a little bit of die grinding. I only have to take out about 1/16 of an inch, but my die grinder, my only die grinder was a constant speed, and we were dealing with something that's irreplaceable. I wanted a variable speed die grinder, so it took a few days to get one in. So I'm going to just grind out a little bit of the metal here, and we'll see how this igniter fits then. And if you were to look at the hole, I don't know how well it shows up on camera. The hole is actually just a little bit egg-shaped. Okay, let's see. Because when I went to do this, it wouldn't even slide in or out. Yeah, see, I don't know if this will show up. You see where it's dragging right there as it goes in and out. I'm going to take just a little bit more out of there. And there it slid right in with no problems. So I'm going to get this thing wired up, and I'll bring you back and hopefully we'll have it fired off. Well, I've got it all primed, I've got my jump box hooked up. Let's see what it does. Still doesn't act like it's getting any spark. Let's see here. Hooked up, hooked up, hooked up. Where you at, Roscoe? Oh, there you are. Okay. Still not getting voltage to the igniter. Coil's bad. All right, let me switch out the coils and we'll try again. I try to upload some of this on YouTube.
Yeah, it's running pretty good.
Yeah, well, it's just a matter of playing and getting it right.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
The right combination, so I need to go with an even heavier fuel pump spring, and I need
I'll shorten that little extra I pulled up there. That one there is brand new. And I went where I could. I went with piano wire because it's unfinished. So I went with piano wire where possible. But these other two frames, they didn't have any piano wire for them. Huh? Pretty nice out here right now.
Well, it almost looks like you're not getting any more blow-by from that igniter.
Does it seal up?
What's that? No, I'm not seeing any.
Considering it has running.
Might be a matter of getting maybe the gasket was a little dry. Could have been. Yeah. Could have been. The last things that I ever worked on, somebody donated a
Oh, okay, that'd be cool.
Oh, it was, yeah. Then there was an odd engine. So I never put the engine on that.